next guest. He's written a book called Detours to Destiny, a memoir. Elling Halverson. He is also the chairman of Papillion Airways. He owned a construction company that specialized in projects in high logistics remote areas. Wow, fascinating. So how about this, Elling? Take us back to this day, 13.5 miles of treacherous canyon at the Grand Canyon. And what was it like when you started that project?
Well, I surveyed the project in 1964 by walking the entire pipeline and making notes as I went. There were so many difficult choices to be made. That is, how to get the pipe into the canyon and how to get it distributed over the length of the pipeline, and where and when to bend the pipe to fit the contour of the land, since there was a vertical or horizontal bend in the pipe about every 15 feet. And the backfill was a problem because there was no 3/4 inch minus material available, obviously. We were limited to a 6.5 foot right of way or the width of the trail, whichever was the least. And one by one, we had to deal with these problems, and each one of these conditions actually had a detour attached to it, because nothing worked perfect the first time around. So one of the major problems was the backfill material. It was a federal specification that it had to be met, and there was no material, and it would have cost maybe $100 million to fly it in by helicopter. So that wasn't practical, and so we studied the situation, and it came upon me as I stood there that the backfill was right under our feet. The only thing is, we have to find a way to process it, and so that evening when we went to our cabins, I did some drawing and sketching, and came back the next day, and I had sketched out a little drilling machine that would drill a hole about every 2 feet in the soil. We'd go down with a 3-foot hole to put dynamite in it and blast the rock. And then I had sketched out a self-propelled crushing machine that we would have to build that would crush the rock, and we designed a backhoe, a special backhoe that would dig the shot rock and put it into this crushing machine, and it would crush the material and fill the ditch underneath the crusher as it was moving along. It was self-propelled. And it was a very, very skinny machine, and it would steer on either end in order to get around the tight corners that we had to navigate. But it worked very well, and we completed 13.5 miles of crushed rock with that machine.
Wow. And so you do this incredible job because, your book, again, is Detours to Destiny, a memoir. You can get it on Amazon.com. And we're speaking with Ellington Halverson. And, Ellington, Elling, you look at what you did, which is incredible, and then you have this work, and poof, a flood comes along, and that's one of those detours you're talking about. What happens when the flood comes along? You've won this bid. You certainly have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and what happened?
Well, this was a 1,500-year flood that wiped out, literally reformed the interior of the canyon, and it moved boulders the size of an automobile in several cases.
Wow.
It took all of our equipment out of the canyon. We never saw most of it again, and we parked everything above the floodplain, supposedly above the 100-year floodplain, and the job was a better design job. We had to guarantee 600 gallons of water at the end of the pipeline. And when the flood came, the pipeline was full of water. It was ready to turn over to the Park Service, except for dressing in the trails and just cleaning up the site. And the flood took out 8.5 miles of the pipeline and took out several bridges that we had built down there, and just totally destroyed our project. The government took the position that since it was an act of God, it was the contractor's responsibility to replace the pipeline at no cost to the government. Well, we fought that very, very hard, myself and my attorney, and we met for months with the Park Service attorneys, a battery of attorneys that always confronted us. And we had, true that we had designed the pipeline, but we had put it where they had staked it. And we said that you staked it in the wrong place. We built the pipeline. It was a good pipeline, but it wasn't our fault, you know. The pipeline was staked wrong. And so they just argued with us all the time regarding that.
Yeah. And then eventually what happens, right, is that you ended up on so you're emotionally shot, you're penniless in a sense because you're out all this cash. And then how did you resolve it?
Well, I played them along for the last half of the summer and just arguing with them. And finally, in the fall of the year, in one of our meetings, I came in and I said, I have good news for you, that I will put the pipe back in the pipeline. I will put the pipeline back in place at no cost to the government. I have a builder's all-risk policy that I haven't told anyone about with Lloyd's of London that will do that. And they just became jubilant, and they were doing high flying. We knew you'd come around to our way of thinking, and they were just having a party. And after it settled down just a little bit, I said, I have one favor, though, to ask of you. And he said, oh, sure, we'll be glad to help, Elling. I said, I need the canyon put back in place the way it was when I bid the job. And I just had him. I nailed him.
Oh, I love that story. So that's just one of many stories. We can't tell all your stories, but that's the idea of why you want to read about this fascinating man, because he's had an unusual life. Why did you write the book, and what do you hope people take away from this, Elling?
Well, I've had such an unusual life that started out with twin sons that had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. It seems like I was always up against some problem that I had to figure out how to get around it. And they told me that my sons wouldn't live past mid-teens. And my wife and I just went in the Arboretum at the University of Washington and cried our hearts out. But one of those sons is still living. He's 63 years old. The other one we just lost a couple of years ago, but not to Duchenne's. We lost him to cancer of the liver.
Wow.
Where that, we don't know. But I had problems like this throughout my entire life, but we overcame them all the time. And my two sons, they've been so successful. They have 120 some big trophies for softball and basketball teams that they coach. And my life has been kind of like that in so many respects. And I just share a lot of those experiences in the book. Most people who start reading the book say they can't set it down.
Yeah, because you give people, I think what they need is, hey, you can get through this because you got through some tough things and you didn't listen to what initially many times was told to you and you overcame circumstances. Elling Halverson, again, the book is Detours to Destiny, a memoir. Pick this book up. You won't put it down either. It's on Amazon. Thank you so much.
Well, you're so welcome, Kate.